everybody. This is Sherry Kimes, and I'd like to welcome you to our keynote on digitalization of restaurants and delivery and all those sorts of fun things. And I'm very lucky today. I'm joined by a team of three experts. So I have Jing'an Lee, Adrian Debele, and Noah Glass. And Jing'an is with Momentum Works. Adrian is with Salad Stop in Singapore, and three of us are in Singapore, and Noah Glass is the CEO of Olo. And so, Jing'an, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Zhang Gan. I don't have a namesake throughout my entire life. So I'm from China, but I've been living in Singapore for the last 20 years. And I've run a number of platforms for Rocket Internet, including Foodpanda. But now I run a venture outfit called Momentum Works, and our biggest shareholder is, our biggest investor is co-founder of Alibaba.
All right, and Adrian?
Hello, I'm Adrian, based in Singapore as well. Graduated in 2004 from Cornell, grew up in this part of the world, so Singapore's been home for a long time. Started Salad Stop 12 years ago. We're in 8 markets today, 65 stores, and moved online about 6 years ago. So I guess I've been part of this digitalization journey for a while, and obviously, had a lot of interesting learnings through COVID, which I think we're all excited to share today.
And Noah?
Hi, everybody. I'm Noah Glass. I'm the founder and CEO of Olo. Olo is a leading on-demand commerce platform powering the restaurant industry's digital transformation based here in New York City in the US. Millions of orders per day run on Olo's enterprise SaaS engine, enabling brands to maximize the convergence of digital and brick and mortar operations. The Olo platform provides the infrastructure to capture demand and manage consumer orders from every channel, with integrations to over 100 technology partners. Olo customers can build digital experiences with the largest and most flexible restaurant commerce ecosystem on the market. Today, over 400 restaurant brands representing over 74,000 individual restaurant locations use Olo to grow digital sales, maximize profitability, and preserve direct customer relationships. And thank you for having me today, Sherry.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. And what I like today is we have people from all different aspects. So you heard, Jing'an is, Momentum Works. They look at delivery and other technologies throughout Southeast Asia and China. Plus, he used to run a delivery platform. We've got Adrian, who is there. He's got a small chain of restaurants, very involved with digitalization. And Noah, you just heard, they are doing the whole digitalization and a lot with delivery. Really, the only people we don't have here tonight are the drivers. And of course, we don't have the customers, but I assume you're all customers. So I think we're fine there. So let's just start off talking about delivery, because this is kind of driving a lot of restaurant operators crazy, and they're kind of worried about it. And then you hear they're not making any money, and you hear the platforms aren't making money. And so my question to all of you is, so who are the winners and losers in this? It doesn't seem like anybody's really making any money. And so what would you say? And so Noah, let's start off with you. Who do you see as the winners and losers?
Well, thanks. Before addressing delivery specifically, I think it's important to understand delivery's role, at least in the US restaurant industry. The data source that we tend to look to is NPD. And according to NPD, the restaurant industry has about $800 billion in annual sales and 60 billion transactions that make up those sales. And of those 60 billion transactions, only 4.8 billion are for delivery. It's only 8% of the industry's total. So in other words, delivery is just a small piece of the pie in the restaurant industry. When you look at pickup, by contrast, pickup is 21 billion transactions, 36% of the industry total, about 4 times larger, more than 4 times larger, 4.5 times larger. So at Olo, we built a delivery-oriented module called Dispatch, and we built it to help restaurant operators to own the delivery experience even without having to go and hire their own delivery drivers. So Dispatch helps restaurants to reduce their dependence on the third-party marketplaces for delivery, tapping in instead to a network of restaurant delivery services, or delivery service providers, as we call them. And that leads to a deeper set of customer relationships and, of course, better unit economics when the cost of delivery is offset by the consumer paying for delivery as a service. We then also launched a product module called Rails, which complements our dispatch and ordering products, and it enables restaurants to generate incremental order volume from a network of third-party marketplace partners. These are DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub and many others. And we encourage our customers, our restaurants, to use both dispatch and also Rails to have first-party delivery and to tap into the demand represented by these third-party marketplaces, so they can maximize sales and extend their brand to additional customers and new audiences. I think in the end, the winners of delivery are those restaurant brands who are controlling the delivery experience and then focusing on increasing direct digital transactions and maximizing customer lifetime value.
And Adrian, how about for you?
I mean, I think today the customer is still winning. This delivery cost is heavily subsidized, at least in Asia. I think, like Noah said, that a few restaurants that have figured out how to make this model work. We've seen, even for us, how we've blended in cloud kitchens, physical stores, and a bit of a hybrid model, and the economics work. But I think we see that in the long term, more of that experience needs to be brought in house. We're all, at least in Asia, very reliant on third parties. We don't have some of the solutions that are available in the US today. So we're still very much kind of at the mercy, and a lot of that data is still owned by the third parties. But that has, also changed quite quickly. We've only started deliveries here 6 years ago, and then we were the first guinea pigs to jump on that bandwagon. And I think we've also seen how much that has evolved. In the beginning, it was incremental sales. So again, for the first few operators that joined, we definitely benefited. We were winning as well. But later on, that just ate into our top line. And that's where we sit today. I think, we've not seen that grow so much. And I think it's just, the margins just have eroded, and more of that has just gone to the third party. So I think at least in Asia, it's early days. I think China is leading the way in terms of how the model is sort of adjusting itself. But I think we're always obviously looking at the US for what's coming next.
And Jing'an, you've done, a really interesting report looking at food delivery in Southeast Asia. And then also you're very familiar with we've had some interesting conversations about what goes on in China. Who do you, I guess, two things, the winners and the losers, and with what you've seen in different countries, which country, you've talked to me about China. How is that? Is it the same kind of thing where everybody's losing money, or is it a little bit, is it evolved past that?
I think I definitely agree with Adrian that the customers are the biggest winners. And I think China's delivery scene is a little bit more sort of advanced compared to Southeast Asia. But you can see that the cost for customers is still pretty low. So customers are definitely winning. And the delivery riders, for the short term, at least until now, has been winning. So I have friends back in China who run manufacturing plants, and they find it difficult to recruit young people because everybody wants to be a delivery rider. They earn 30 to 40% more compared to if they were working in the factories full time. So, and of course, the sacrifice is that many of them don't have social security, but it doesn't seem to be a concern for the young people. So for the short term, these guys are earning extra cash. As far as the restaurants is concerned, I think some of them are winning, some of them are losing. In that way, I see, at least from what I see in China, it's not that different from e-commerce, right? Some of the sellers are selling more, some of the sellers are selling less. Some of the sellers are better at marketing themselves on platforms, because platforms do carry a huge sway. And some of the sellers are not, some of the restaurants and sellers are not good at doing that. So, but how does that differ from the scene before the delivery came about? Because even before that, you see huge disparity amongst the performance of different restaurants. And some of them doing well, establishing franchises and stuff, and some of them are sort of closing down very quickly. So I don't know how much different that is compared to before delivery came about.
And so, and if we just kind of let's stick it and talk about it as off-premise dining, so delivery and takeout and pickup and everything out. Do you see this as Adrian, you were talking about, you got involved with this about 6 years ago. You see this as kind of a short-term trend that is just related to the pandemic, or do you think that this has got legs to it? Do you think it's going to continue?
Yeah, definitely see that continuing. I mean, I think the need for convenience is greater than ever. I think COVID obviously has accelerated that. I would say again, if you look at what the third parties do best right now, is they've really been able to sort of create a frictionless experience. And I think a lot of restaurants haven't figured that out yet. So even, again, I'm speaking more from an Asian context, but if you walk into most restaurants here, pickup is pretty messy. The online experience is going to be pretty messy. So I think customers are naturally gravitating to the bigger platforms. That I think is an opportunity for some more white label products to come in and provide just a better experience. So I think, again, very early days in this part of the world. But for us as an example, we're very focused on owning that customer experience. So we've from already 5 years ago, we were very clear that we needed to build our own online piece and we needed to have that capability in-house. And so we've continued to refine that model on our end and see that today pickup represents about 20%, delivery another 30%. So about half of our business is online already today.
And what's interesting with this is the hotel school and, looking at how online travel agents or the OTAs emerged about 20 years ago. And this is exactly the same. And so when I talk to hotel people, they go and I tell them the stories, they go, oh yeah, I remember that. But then at the same time, hotels have tried to, they really don't like paying the commissions to the OTAs either, right? And so they've tried to drive the business to themselves. But what happens is customers like as you mentioned, Adrian, they like the convenience. And Noah, you've told me before that your business was a 10-year overnight success, which I think that's a great story. But when you started off with this, did you think? I mean, obviously, you must have had some premonition that this was going to happen, or some. I mean, you wouldn't have started the company otherwise. Did you, when you look at this whole thing about is what's going on right now, is this just a short-term trend, or do you think this is something that's going to continue into the future, and why?
Well, yeah, having started the company in 2005, we can look back at 16 years of the growth of digital, and delivery has been the recent story, but the growth of digital sales volume through a mix of takeout and delivery is something that we've been able to see from the very beginning. And if I look at just the recent years, I mean, we processed 50 million orders through our platform in 2017, 100 million in 2018, 200 million in 2019. And then with really the hardship that restaurants experienced in 2020 with COVID-19 and what it meant for their service model, where digital became really a lifeline for remaining in business, we processed 500 million orders through the platform in 2020. And there's some, obviously, restaurant network growth that is a driver, but the bigger driver is more consumers choosing to order through digital. And again, not just delivery, digital for delivery and pickup. And we're also starting to see new behaviors emerging really out of the era of COVID-19, like QR code ordering. And it's led to my being able to say to our investors, what I see in the future is not what we used to talk about as digital primacy, digital being the majority way in which orders are being placed. What I now see is digital entirety, of digital being an important part of every service model of takeout, of delivery, of drive-through, and also on-premise. And I think that's just an undeniable trend that consumers are seeing, that they can have a better experience, and operators are seeing that they can run a more efficient operation and better serve the guest through the shift over to digital. I think when you have that value on both sides of the equation, it feels like it is an inevitability that we're going to head in that direction. And that's what we are really excited about in our business and thinking about ways that, yes, we can grow delivery and takeout, but we can also grow in drive-through and on-premise as well.
And what's interesting with that, because Noah, I remember back, this is probably 10 some years ago, and maybe when we met, and we were talking about online ordering and everything, and I did a study on this. And one of the things I found was really interesting. I did it with consumers and with operators. And the consumers pretty much said, no, we really don't want to talk to the operators. And the operators said, yes, they do. And so it's always struck me that in the restaurant industry, there's been a real resistance to technology and to digitalization. And Jing'an, just kind of continuing, let's just kind of talk a little bit about the digitalization. I know you do a lot of stuff with payment as well. How have you seen this? How have you seen this evolving? And again, does it vary? Do you see it varying by country? Because I mean, there's some talk too that some of the less developed countries are actually moving at this really fairly quickly because they didn't have the other infrastructure.
I remember in 2017 when we first got invested by the Alibaba co-founder, I went to Hangzhou, and that was 2017. We walk into a normal restaurant in Hangzhou, everything you can do on mini programs on, I think, Alipay, and in other cities in China, you can do that with WeChat. So you go there, you take a queue number by scanning a QR code, and when you get into that, you scan another QR code to order, and at the end, you scan the QR code again to pay. So that was already back in 2017, and I asked people there, why would you do that everything? They said, I mean, customers want that because when they come here, they will say that, okay, I go elsewhere, I can use my Alipay to do everything. When I come here, I have to wait for the waiter to come. Why would I? So that ecosystem built by the large platforms sort of forced restaurants to adapt. And I think the ecosystem here in Southeast Asia, I see that only emerging in the last 2 years after 2018. We start seeing massive money being invested in platforms in this region. And 2019, of course, 2020, you have the huge accelerant, which is the pandemic that forces lots of people to stay at home and to order food. That also forced people to not touch the physical menu. So I think, I mean, things which were destined to happen, but once you have a trigger, once you have something that suddenly sort of pushes everyone, it goes faster.
And it's kind of one of those things. I think what I told my students is that this is a very interesting time, but not the kind of time I really want to go through again. But again, very interesting because of how quickly things are moving. But let's so with all of this going on, so we've got an increase in off-premise dining, we've got this digitalization, and Adrian, I'm going to give it to you since you're the operator here. Oh my goodness, how in the world can a restaurant make it in this? You've obviously got some approaches to it, but what can they do? This is different.
It is different, and I think, you're right. It's been a roller coaster ride. It's been messy. Even 2 years ago, I think we opened a cloud kitchen with 26 tablets because every single delivery partner gave us a little device, and you just have the bells ringing all day long, and it's just chaos. So I think a lot of operators are just trying to just figure out how to make this work, even again on the ground. But I would say for us at least, again, more from an economic model, how we see it today is that a hybrid model makes the most sense. One that, okay, again, slightly more of an Asian context where you talk about very high density, right? You're looking at a lot of metropolitan areas of 15 million people. And when you have that, obviously you still have a few locations that make sense just from a pure footfall, where you might not even be able to handle much more traffic online. So I think we see that there's a model for that offline model, and then there's more residential areas where then a cloud kitchen or something that relies more on an online presence makes sense. Then I think it's about figuring out your P&L and making sure that rental and your commissions are going to work out. And I think that's been what we have been very focused on for the past 3 or 4 years, to be very strict with ourselves to say, okay, well, this location, this is the maximum we'll pay in terms of the physical rental, and then our online rental, this is what we have with the third party. So I think that a lot of operators need to figure that out. I think for us, we had started that journey early on, and we were able to kind of restructure our business that way. But I would say in the longer run, we really see that hybrid model making the most sense, and being where the customers are and figuring out which platform to be on as well.
And Noah, and Beth, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Adrian? Do you see the third-party platform, delivery platforms, as direct competition to commercial real estate?
Yes, and I think so. And the thing is, the commercial real estate, or at least the landlords, are not willing to accept this fact. I think now with COVID, I think the realization has kicked in, and I think even Singapore has passed a law where you're not allowed to charge on a fixed rental and a percentage, because what was happening was that landlords were benefiting both ways. We were paying delivery commissions and we were paying a percentage to the landlord, which obviously the model doesn't work at that point. So that realization has sunk in now. And I would say, again, I think they're competing in a way against each other, because, we have actually moved a physical location that was in a mall to just being across the road, because we know exactly the delivery radius, we know our catchment, we know how the business works, and that we actually can do even better because of the economics again. So we've had those very frank discussions with landlords and moved out, and I think that's happening now. I think that whole model is shifting, and I think again in Asia, where your rents are so high, it's similar to New York or again metropolitan areas. You have to kind of decide which path you're going to take and what model makes most sense.
And it's kind of figuring out how you're going to make it work financially. And Adrian, you made the comment about the tablets, and Noah, you've talked about tablet hell. How can you, let's stick with the restaurants, and then we'll switch over to the platforms a little bit. What can given what's going on with all the digitalization and the switch to off-premise dining and consumer preferences, what can a restaurant do to stay financially, to stay afloat? What can they do to be successful?
Yeah, from our perspective, restaurants have to diversify, and they have to give customers the option to order through a variety of channels, in store, over the phone, through digital, I think direct channel, most importantly, and also indirect channels, and the ability to remain in control and dial up or dial down or turn off the channels that you don't want on to remain most profitable is critically important, and gets right into, Sherry, I know your specialty in revenue management, but the restaurant brands that are most successful, that were most successful during the pandemic, were those that were able to adapt and meet the customers where they are. And I think that's exactly what Adrian was just saying. In parallel, restaurants have to focus on fostering direct relationships with their customers. That's building up the direct digital channel. And they have to invest in technology solutions that give them the tools to acquire those customers and retain those customers and maximize their customer lifetime value. A loyal customer base is going to be absolutely vital to surviving changing conditions, pandemic or no pandemic. And there is no greater true north metric than direct digital health measured by customer lifetime value.
And it's kind of, and then along with that too, as I think about a traditional restaurant operator who maybe it's third generation, it's a family business sort of thing, and they've never done much in the way of technology, and making that transition. We could come back to that. That's really difficult, and that's kind of where I see a lot of challenges. We could talk about that all day. So but let's talk about the platforms. And Jagan, you are our designate. Given that you used to run Food Panda, you are the platform guy. They're not making any money either. So what can they do to be able to be financially successful, or to become that way from where they are right now?
Um, I've personally been very heavily invested in Meituan, which is the leading platform in China. I think last year they owned 65% of the market share, and this year is even more. So they have a big competitor called Alibaba, and who runs this platform called Ele.me. And of course, the questions amongst investors is often that, okay, what makes Meituan more viable? I mean, what do they do that's better than their competitor, which is losing money? I have I've read lots of on the ground surveys, interviews with people on the ground, operational sort of due diligence, etc., etc. At the end of the day, there isn't much difference. They're just operating every single aspect more efficiently compared to their competitor. I think that down they're making about RMB 20s fen, which works out to be about 3 US cents per order profit, and it's profitable. And they do lots of orders in China. So it's a very thin margin, and because they're efficient in all the areas, and it's pretty difficult for any competitor to derive that efficiency at that scale. When we look at platforms outside China, I think most of them are not profitable yet. Most of them have not reached that volume and density yet. And even for Meituan, I mean, I know people in the corporate finance team, before they started making a profit, I think first quarter or second quarter last year, and people were skeptical. People said that, okay, you spend so much time building such a large fleet, dispatching system, et cetera, very, very costly. I mean, that's a drag to your valuation. But once they started making a profit in that particular segment, for delivery segment, people started changing their mind. They said, okay, now you have this hyper-local on-demand fulfillment network. Now people start thinking that what else can you fulfill with this? Groceries, real-time commerce, whatever. So when I look at the platforms in Southeast Asia, obviously Grab is leading the way across the region. They have not reached that density yet. I think will still take a while. And at the same time, there's no magic. I mean, you have to make each aspect of the operation. It's just like we operate a restaurant, right? Each aspect it has to be very, very efficient. And you have to have volume and scale.
And Noah, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I've heard things about some of the delivery platforms. I mean, you're kind of switching over to things with higher basket size because the margin is going to be, they'll be able to make some money, or right now they're putting a lot of money into customer acquisition. I mean, how do you see this evolving?
I think it's a very large prize that these players are competing for. And so I imagine that they will continue to pour resources, investors will continue to pour resources into investing in one of them being the winner. And I think that's not a winner takes all across the globe. It's sort of a market by market, winner takes most. That seems to be where things are settling out. I can't speak to the economic model. I don't know it as intimately well as Jing'an, but I think these are difficult models to make work. Obviously, you have restaurant acquisition, consumer acquisition, and all those drivers who are quitting their jobs are doing so because they're being lured over by the driver acquisition. So there are sort of three key stakeholder groups that need to all come together, and that's all very expensive to operate. And so, what you see is the best operators, sounds like Meituan in China, coming out on top, being able to find ways to make a margin, however thin, and have that kind of first scalar advantage that builds over time. And I think that is happening as well in the US, with DoorDash being in that pole position. And then behind it, you have Uber with Uber Eats. And then the third major player is what was Grubhub Seamless and was just acquired by Just Eat Takeaway, the European player, a really global player at this point, moving into the US by making that acquisition. The last I looked, and this is somewhat dated data, DoorDash was about 56% market share Uber Eats after Postmates acquisition, 27%, Grubhub, 16%. So it sounds pretty similar to Meituan and their dominance in China. But I continue to see this being an area where you have multiple players all competing for the prize, and not where one is really emerging as the only player in the space. And I think that's just a product of all of the investor interest in the space and wanting to compete for the prize at the end.
And kind of continuing along with this, I mean, Jing'an, I mean, I've read some studies saying that the platforms that are offering multiple services, and so they might be having delivery, they have payment, they have rides, they have, I mean, all sorts of different things, that they have a higher probability of success than those that just focus in on one stream of revenue. What are your thoughts on this, or what have you seen?
If not for the crackdown on Ant Group last year, I think Meta would have gone all out in lending to both consumers as well as restaurants. So obviously, when you have that pool of merchants and restaurants, you think about monetizing that in different ways, and especially the customer pool. You try to increase your wallet share. Alibaba, I mean, the reason why Alibaba invests so much money in Ele.me is that they are afraid that Meituan would go into e-commerce because they have the fulfillment network. So it's I mean, it's very, very messy environment because everyone and everyone else have the same set of customers, and of course they try to sort of make as much money from customers as possible. That means that each one is encroaching into others in territory, and this is something that we don't really. I mean, we see a bit in the West with the what Amazon is doing, etc., but not as intensively as what you see in China or what you start to see in Southeast Asia. So people will try to encroach other people's boundary and to make the sort of operational efficiency as well as the customer lifetime value higher. So unless regulators step in saying that you can't do this, can't do that, otherwise I think we'll see this continue because investors' expectations are there.
And it's interesting too, because it's just how they're, I mean, one of the things I find fascinating about this area is one of the terms you just used is really messy, and it's still evolving. And so, which is kind of interesting seeing how it does evolve. And let's switch back to the restaurant side. And, you know, I'm a revenue management person, and for some reason, I mean, I really like helping restaurants make money. Well, that's actually a good thing. But then I look at how can they use their capacity to generate revenue. And so, Adrian, one of the things you mentioned when you went into ghost kitchens, and we'll start off with you, and then just kind of get Noah and Jung to come in on that too. Is that so? The ghost kitchen, I mean, there's obviously different models of this, but it's a way to basically separate out your production. What's been your experience with this, and kind of point your pros and cons of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think our experience has been that it needs to be a multi-brand approach. A single brand is generally pretty hard to make work in that kitchen. Plus, you're not really optimizing that space. So, you know, we opened our cloud kitchens in Singapore with 3 brands under one roof. And then from there, with all the SKUs that we have, we actually just continue developing virtual brands. And I would say the biggest pro there is the A/B testing. Just I mean, and that's the fascinating part that, you know, we all experienced during COVID, is we could just throw something out there, see if it stuck. And then if not, you know, it didn't take us very long. We didn't even have to go through much of a branding exercise or many developers. We just sort of put something out there and see if there was the demand. So I think that's the most interesting part of it, is just how much incremental revenue you can build, and how much you can push it basically from that point onwards. And I think there's a certain skill to understanding the online space. I think, again, even down to photography and pricing. And I mean, there are a lot of little tips that you pick up along the way on what works, and you know, even in terms of discounts and you know, for especially a price sensitive market like Singapore, those things you also need to be very careful with. So I think that's something that, again, if you play the game right, then you can understand that. And it's not just in a ghost kitchen setting. It works even. We run virtual brands out of existing restaurants. Where, just to give you an example, Salad Stop, is our core brand, but we run a smoothie bowl brand. And that's just frozen items. We reuse some ingredients from the salad bar. Nobody knows that comes out of a Salad Stop kitchen, but the delivery riders are there. They pick that up. They can add it to a Salad Stop basket as well. So I think the way we look at a kitchen is quite different, and the way we lay out a store now is also quite different, because even we need to think about circulation space for delivery riders and how to make sure that a walk-in customer's experience is as good as it was before. So there are a lot of elements. I think on the con side is that the online business, if you're running purely online, can fluctuate quite a bit. And if one of your competitors is running an aggressive promotion, you can't predict some of those things. I would say the offline business, or what we were all used to before, is just a lot more predictable. Online, even delivery companies sometimes will rank, certain restaurants, and the algorithm will determine that ranking based on a number of factors, and sometimes it's just because the discount that the restaurant is offered. So I would say it's much more volatile. It's a more stressful game to play, but it's one that I believe that if you get the balance right, and you can potentially benefit from both.
And Noah, I mean, Adrian just mentioned the ghost kitchens and then also virtual brands. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I am thinking back to the end of 2014, which seems like a long time ago, 7 years ago. I was asked to give a speech at a conference called Web Summit in Dublin. And the question was, what is the restaurant of the future going to look like? And at the time, I think it was a kind of a controversial answer that I gave, which was, the restaurant of the future is going to be a kitchen with a pickup window. And I think that is effectively what ghost kitchens are. With delivery drivers picking up the orders from that window or the handoff area. And I expect now ghost and virtual kitchens to continue to grow. I mean, the advantages from the unit economics perspective are stark, especially viewed within the lens of the recent labor shortage that at least is all the news in the industry in the US. And still, I believe that traditional brick and mortar restaurants will have huge staying power. To Adrian's point, customers demand that direct experience with their favorite brands, and that is a meaningful chunk of the industry. It is by the numbers that I shared through NPD, 24% of transactions, so about 15 billion or so, that are consumers eating inside of a restaurant. It's shocking to think about 76% not being eating inside of the restaurant, and just 24% being a meal consumed inside the four walls. Because I think all of us, when asked to describe a restaurant, somebody would describe the on-premise experience. It is still a meaningful chunk, though. And I think, again, relative to delivery, it's 3 times the number of transactions are occurring inside the four walls than are occurring through delivery itself.
And what's interesting with that, too, is that the 24% figure is kind of startling. But I'm going to put myself as a traditional restaurant operator. Wait a minute, my customers are just going to come in and pick up from a window. That's not why I got into this business. I mean, what am I doing? Am I just a factory? I mean, I think the mindset is, it's really different. Really different for a lot of people. And Jung-An, I mean, what do you think? I mean, all the stuff with ghost kitchens and virtual brands, do you think that this is something that will continue, or how do you think this is going to play out? And are there any particular approaches with this that seem to work better than others?
I just realized when you mentioned about traditional restaurant owners. I've been reflecting for the last few minutes. And I think back in China, we don't really have traditional restaurant owners. And urbanization only happened in the last 20 years, and many of, I mean, before that, people cooked at home, people ate at home, or school or factory or whatever canteens. So this really happened, and I was thinking about, I mean, why restaurants in China could adapt so fast. So that's probably one of the reasons. Back to your point, I think I've been to a few Asian sort of restaurants. Like you have this wuxi thing. I've been a few times. This is exactly what we see in China as well, right? And when the delivery infrastructure is built up, that people are able to test new restaurant brands and see what gets attraction. I mean, with a bit of marketing and stuff. But what we typically see in China, maybe it's the same thing here in Singapore, in other places as well, right? Is the restaurants which have tested online, restaurant concepts which have been tested online to show some traction, and immediately you see that the owners start opening up massively offline. It makes it easier for them to talk to real estate owners. It makes their lives more secure, right? As Adrian said, I mean, online, I mean, you just can't guarantee that your brand will always be there. I mean, there's so many different factors. And when people start, I mean, of course, pandemic's an exceptional setting, but otherwise, when people see you have a restaurant online, I do think that, offline, that does help you, your online orders as well, right? Because people see it, I mean, and they feel it, and when they search for things, it naturally comes to their mind.
Well, it's like having a storefront. I saw a really interesting study. I think it was by Euromonitor a couple of years ago, and it was talking about that as one of the kind of how the ghost kitchens were going to evolve, and having the storefront, but I mean, some of the research I did recently, kind of looking at, and we'll switch. I mean, this is kind of getting into virtual brands and ghost kitchens, is that customers didn't really care where it was made. They said all that mattered was the food is good. It's like, wow, okay. And so with virtual, let's go to virtual brands. And so Noah, I know that Olo does some work with some virtual brands. Is this just a trend, or is this something that you think has got some legs to it?
Yeah, so Olo supports a number of virtual brands on our platform. I think the one that was at least a milestone brand for virtual brands is Mr. Beast Burger, which was built on top of the Olo platform and was launched overnight in 200 locations around the country, rose to #1 on the iTunes App Store, supplanting YouTube in #1, not just for food and drink, #1 across the App Store. And we had no idea how it was going to perform, and it did 1 million orders within, I think, its first month. It was an amazing success. We've seen others. We've seen restaurant brands like Wingstop launching Thigh Stop as a virtual brand to have a creative solution to the commodity price pressure they were seeing with wings and shifting over to thighs, but prepared in the same way in a virtual brand setting. I'll say our customers, our restaurants, view this as an incremental revenue source, see it as having strong margins, and the virtual brand can often be operated in that same brick and mortar kitchen. And we've seen a lot of that activity. So I'm a believer in virtual brands as incremental to traditional brands. And I think the most formidable brands of the future will continue to have brick and mortar stores. We are seeing some of that where a brand starts out, I mean, talk about the ultimate A/B test, as a virtual brand, and then proves itself and gets put into the brick and mortar setting in addition to operating in the digital world as well.
Oh, what's interesting with that too, I've read some things about how like you get in, I was reading about, I forget the name of the company, but they were taking over the cafes in Walmart. And then you see, I mean, so basically it was going to be ghost kitchen, and the sort of places where people, I mean, you've got lots of customers who want food, but and getting that kind of food to them. Now, but the other part with this too is that with the ghost kitchen, I mean, a lot of people talk about it, and then I've heard, well, yeah, but financially it doesn't make any sense. And so, Adrian, I mean, there's different models of this. If you were going to be giving advice to someone, what would you say for a ghost kitchen? What should they be thinking about with that?
So, I mean, obviously, the finding that right location is the number one priority. So, making sure that your delivery radius captures the right audience and gives you the best kind of start. I think the second would be really figuring out your customer acquisition cost. You know, how are you going to reach out to those people? And you know, and we've seen that as well. You know, where some people will do a pop-up and just get down into the community and figure out a way to get their brand known, even though, you know, majority of their sales are then coming through the Ghost Kitchen. So I think figuring that piece out is really critical, having that marketing plan from the beginning. And then I think, again, leveraging on multiple brands that you can launch. You know, some Ghost Kitchens here would run 80% through one fried chicken brand and then have another few brands that are kind of complementary to that. But, you know, they can kind of pivot and test a lot of new things. So I think that's the beauty of the model. That's how you need to think about it. But just sort of going back to Jiang's point as well, I think, you know, when I think even to our stores now and how we would model it moving forward, I often think about that O2O as well, and thinking about, you know, how can we maximize the revenue potential of that store? If it means, you know, having a proprietary patty on the salad bar that then someone can order to their home, and that you know, becomes a bit of a grocery model in some ways, right? But I think being able to maximize that, building your brand, building that emotional connection with the customer. Again, we do it from a store level. If you're Ghost Kitchen, you can do that in pop-ups, through social media, or working with celebrities. I mean, here that's a big thing. So I think it's about also thinking a little bit about how you can market yourself a little bit differently and showcase your product to that, you know, that target audience that hopefully is within that, at least for us, it's within a 3-kilometer radius. But I think it's incredibly powerful what you can do online. It's just you need to get that marketing strategy right. And what we see is often the ones that operate the best Ghost Kitchens just come with a different background. They're passionate about food. They understand what it takes to sort of deliver a good final product, but they're generally very savvy online. They understand social media. They understand, you know, the economics on the digital marketing front. And I think that you need to already be pretty caught up with all of that. And that's why I think that the whole model is so much more challenging now, because we, you know, in the restaurant industry, we need sort of become mini experts in so many areas, which, you know, even 5-6 years ago was not the case.
And speaking of customer relationships, Noah, you wrote me earlier today that you just got really involved with something like that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm pleased, sort of hot off the presses, we were able to announce Olo's first acquisition yesterday after the market closed. And it was a company that's been a partner of ours for over 5 years now, called Wisely. And it is a customer relationship management platform, software platform for restaurants, many of the same customers, the same type of customers that we work with. It's also the first customer data platform that is purpose built for restaurants. So it takes all of the digital customer information through different silos, in-store purchases, online purchases, email, in-restaurant Wi-Fi, surveys, third-party surveys on Yelp, Google, reservations, waitlist. It pulls that all together into a single view of that consumer. And that enables them to really help brands determine customer lifetime value in a way that is powerful, of course, for marketing back to that customer, but has a lot of benefit beyond just the marketing side of the house. It is also something that when you compare high lifetime value customers to the menu and see what menu items are leading to that kind of high customer lifetime value, it might change menu mix. When you can think about the servers in the restaurant that are correlated with the highest customer lifetime value, you might think about who to staff on different shifts. When you can think about, you know, site selection and where you put your next restaurant location or your next Ghost Kitchen, that can be mapped onto where you believe they're going to be high customer lifetime value customers. So we see it as an incredible set of tools to offer up to our restaurants and the industry to really help leverage data to make better decisions for the entire restaurant enterprise across all of its facets.
And I've got a couple more questions because I want to make sure that we have some time for Q&A because we're having questions coming in. We got a lot coming in. And one thing we haven't talked about the drivers. And so Jingan, I mean, right now, I mean, you were talking about in China where people want to do it, but in a lot of other countries, the drivers don't want to do it. And there's the whole thing about the last mile delivery is just very, very expensive. How do you see this evolving in the future? And this is being recorded, but we won't hold you to your prediction.
I think from the platform point of view, and the future in their mind would be robots and drones. That's for sure. I mean, you see that being tested in multiple places because I think with drivers and of course in all the countries at different speed, the price is rising. And you compensate that with more efficiency, but I mean, as if the economy is developing, that the driver cost is definitely rising, and how do you make that sustainable for the long term? So that's a hard question that everyone's trying to figure out. But I do think that when it comes to drivers, I mean, there are lots of other issues which you need to deal with, right? I mean, whether you pay them Social Security, who pays their Social Security, and if they don't want to be paid Social Security, do you still pay them the Social Security? So, and also, I mean, in countries like Singapore, right, you obviously have this limitation of, I mean, basically can't hire foreigners, so the labor pool is limited. So I think in each city the issues are pretty different. Even within China, I mean, I look at the ground surveys in different provinces. I mean, the driver issues they face are all different. So I mean, robots and drones are probably the future, but in the short term there'll be lots of sort of operations to figure out all these on-ground people issues and labor relations, etc. So it's hard work.
I mean, and Noah, have you seen any interesting developments with this? Because I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's expensive, and there's also, I mean, the fact too that you start talking about insurance and start talking about benefits and everything, and a limited labor pool. But customers still want this. So what happens then? How do you make this work?
The way I see it most is in restaurant brands that have had their own delivery drivers disbanding their delivery fleet and instead leveraging our dispatch platform to tap into multiple delivery service providers. We also now have the reverse happening, which is interesting, where we have a little bit of a hybrid model. We have some restaurants that are staffing a small crew of delivery drivers and only during peak times on peak days. And through the dispatch platform, only taking those orders that are of a certain size and that are of a close delivery range. So the high profitability orders, and then letting the other orders go into the third party driver pool that is dispatch. So it's fascinating to watch the different strategies that restaurants are using, all with the goal of meeting the consumer's need to get food delivered to them, but trying to do that in the most profitable way possible. And obviously taking into account all of the complexities of insurance and regulatory issues related to employing drivers, which the third parties are dealing with in a major way in the U.S. In different regions and localities in different ways as there's regulation.
And we got some questions here. This is from Dr. Daisy Valentine. How do you help F&B management in larger malls? Who wants to take that one? You got multiple restaurants in a mall. What can be done there? Oh, I'm going to have to do cold calling on that one. Adrian, I'm cold calling on you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've actually just experienced that. So, we have two shops actually in the same mall. Luckily, they're next to each other, so we're able to batch orders, and I guess operationally that makes a little bit more sense. But I think we've had some interesting conversations with the delivery companies on this front actually, because we we see, again, from a customer standpoint, it's a great value, right? When you can order from multiple restaurants and again, I think the model, like Jiang was saying, is, I think that's where even the delivery companies start making the model work. As much as possible, I guess, either with the delivery companies to figure out a model where they can pick up from multiple locations, or we've also seen mall management trying to aggregate orders. Now that gets a little bit messy. They're not experts at this, so I think we've piloted that in Singapore and it didn't work. But that could be something else where you all jump on the same platform, you list out your menu, and then again, from a customer standpoint, it's great because they have so many options.
Okay, I've got a few more questions and then we'll start wrapping up. Are your customers, this is from Susan, customers giving you a hard time with increases on your menu prices? Who wants to take that one?
I'll just jump.
Yeah, sure.
Just because I guess we deal with that on a daily basis. Funny enough, we've had one complaint on that in the last 5 years. So most people don't notice. They accept the fact that they're paying very little on the delivery fee, so they're willing to pay a little bit more, and they've just understood that your online prices and offline are just going to be different. So we've generally found that about a 20% sort of price elasticity is optimum. Above that, then I think you get a few clients that get a little bit upset. But I think, again, it's not just comparing apple to apple, it's what you can also do online. So I think, we also look at adding to a basket, just recommendations, just little tricks on completing a meal, just upselling, basically. That's much more powerful online. And we generally find that our basket is 40% higher online than in store.
And one thing I wanted to mention is there's a wonderful book that I found out about from Noah called Delivering the Digital Restaurant. And they're going to send the link out through chat to everybody. And one of the things they talk about in there is that customers are comparing it to an experience. And so rather than comparing it to how much they're spending, well, how much would it cost me to get a babysitter? How much would it cost me to drive there? All these other sorts of things. And that's really kind of where it is. And Noah, I mean, your thoughts on this? I mean, what you've seen with the data coming in through Olo on whether customers are upset with the pricing.
I would say, picking up on Adrian's point, that there is a customer acceptance of delivery, and sure, I think this is the point from the book as well. There's a customer acceptance that they're going to be paying more for delivery. And that comes into play in different ways, higher menu prices, to Adrian's point, service fees, delivery fees, driver tips. But it feels like customers are paying for that convenience. And yes, it's compared to the experience. It's also in many cases compared to the time value of money, of what would it take for me to go and pick this up myself and bring it home? What would it take for me to go to the grocery store and prepare the meal myself? My time is valuable. I'm willing to pay for the convenience. I think it's really a different need state. I mean, there are many cases when consumers just aren't in a place where they can go to the restaurant, and when they need delivery, they're accepting that they're going to pay for that additional convenience. We've seen that all along since the launch of the dispatch platform in 2016 in earnest, that when you break out the true cost of delivery, consumers are willing to pay that and understand that this is the cost of the food, this is the cost of delivery. I'm choosing to get the food delivered to me, and I'm going to pay that service fee.
And the research I've done on it is customers are fine with it, particularly if you frame it as takeout is cheaper than delivery, but they're fine. So, okay, one last big crystal ball picture, and this is, we will not hold you to this. How do you, let's look 5 years from now. I mean, actually, let's not get that far out. Let's go 2 years from now. So, Jing'an, how's this going to play out? How do you see this playing out if we're having the same conversation 2 years from now?
I think from delivery platform point of view, they will make life interesting for e-commerce platforms. So that's what I see.
Interesting. And what might that mean?
I mean, if you can fulfill stuff like real time, I mean, maybe 60, 70% of the SKUs real time from stores in a city, especially in large cities in Asia where things can be stored in the same city. So that could be a interesting disruption. Okay. Well, you see that happen in some cities in China, by the way.
Interesting. Okay. Adrian, how do you see this playing out 2 years from now?
So I think for the delivery companies, I would, I guess, predict that one of the big players would probably exit the market, at least in Southeast Asia. I think it's, such a fragmented market already. I would say, Grab is at a big advantage right now, being more of a super app. But if you look at the rest, they've got a really uphill climb. So I would say, I don't think that there's enough space for, at least, for example, just in Singapore, 3 big delivery companies. So that's one. I think on the restaurant side, I think there'll be some consolidation. I think there'll be a few that will get this right and will be able to grow substantially, especially post-COVID. Really take advantage of what has happened in the delivery space. And I would also say, lastly, is that I would see a lot more restaurants bring that in-house. So, sort of like what Noah's solution provides, white labeling and being able to dispatch and fulfill orders yourself, I think will be very powerful, because I think restaurants understand the value of data today.
And Noah, 2 years from now, what's this going to be looking like?
Yeah, I've long predicted a doomsday scenario where the restaurant delivery marketplaces sell direct to the consumer and take the customer data that they've gleaned and have their own restaurants to cut restaurants out of the picture. I think that's starting to happen in different parts of the world. I think in a time frame when I imagine digital eclipsing analog orders, that's even more of a threat. And it just speaks to the importance of restaurant brands building their direct channel, building their customer lifetime value, and being a little bit more suspect of that, is it incremental or is it cannibalizing my core business, which is how Adrian started us out. I think what we'll see is the explicit competition between marketplaces and restaurant brands over that time frame.
Oh, that was a wonderful conversation. And thank you all of our viewers for joining us. And Jing'an and Adrian and Noah, thank you very much for joining us. And the eCornell team, they're behind the scenes, but they did a great job of organizing all this. And to the audience, I hope you found this interesting. We obviously could talk about this forever. So if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to contact us. So thank you, everybody.